Spoiler warning. As I'm writing this today, we are officially 8 of 10 episodes into Frieren's second season. With 2 episodes left, we have a pretty good indicator of what the season has offered. Up until this episode, there's been a pretty prominent question in my mind. Are we going to get the same brief, fantastic action sequences that helped me initially fall in love with this show? Because while we had gotten glimpses up until this point, we hadn't gotten equivalent to the dragon fight that happens in episode 6 of the first season, or much more aptly, Stark and Fern's fight versus Lugner and Linny. Welcome to season 2 of Exploring Frieren. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about the episode that made me go, oh, that's where the budget went. Frieren's such an interesting show because while it's not all built around its action sequences, they have become a staple of what makes it special, tapping into world-class levels of animation with it rarely being the priority. When people talk about animation, conversation frequently focuses on budget. This often reduces to money, but in reality there's many important resources that are dedicated to any animation process, because time and time again, different people in the animation industry have urged the importance of time and attention. Any form of storytelling is the byproduct of hundreds of decisions. Compromises are abundant, especially in a medium as complex as animation. But ultimately, when you walk away from something as fully explored as a season of a show, especially a story that's so renowned like Frieren, I'd like there to be a certain feeling. Storytelling often chases audience satisfaction, and that comes in many shapes and forms. And the Revolte arc in Frieren's second season, to me, was incredibly satisfying. Because when you've sat and patiently waited on a roller coaster as we've built for the drop, you don't want an experience that's underwhelming. The last 2 weeks I've been focusing on those setup episodes. I think very highly of them. And I spent most of them looking at Genau, the point of view character for this arc. A fascinating choice to step away from the primary cast while still having them directly be involved. And we got the payoff of all of that setup, and I think it worked fantastically. There's an art to dropping tons of effort into a fantastic crescendo. And this specific episode works for a multitude of different reasons, but we'll get to that in a second. Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. I'm always excited to work with Skillshare because they stand for something I really believe in. Developing yourself in skills you're passionate about is demanding, but having proper resources to guide that development goes a long way. Take for example a class I took recently. Kathy Fish has a descriptive writing class focusing on crafting vivid, immersive scenes. I followed the entire class and it got me to step outside of my comfort zone and try things that I normally wouldn't, exercises that ended up being very valuable. There are 2 fundamental parts of developing a skill: practice and theory. And while you'll have to contribute the practice, having well-structured guidance can reduce the time and all the small points of friction that come with developing a new skill. So insert Skillshare, an outstanding platform built around learning and developing new skills. Skillshare has thousands of classes on a range of different topics. If you want to better understand writing, cinematography, filmmaking, animation, or drawing, there are numerous classes for all skill ranges, which I think is something that's important to emphasize. So often when using online resources to develop new skills, you can't curate for your skill level, which results in the time and effort you're putting in being less effective. I like that Skillshare gives you that information front and center. It helps you parse through their wide range of classes and find the right one for you. So if this is something you're interested in, the first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Now back to the video. This episode works so well as a payoff for not only the season, but more specifically the last 2 episodes. There are specifically 4 major things that I think this episode did very well, and we're going to understand them by approaching the story chronologically. There are 4 major characters involved across 2 settings, leading to 2 pairs of 2. I've mentioned in previous episodes how season 2 has paralleled the first season in structure, and I plan on doing a whole video on that topic once the season's over. Where that comes into play with this episode is the obvious similarities between Stark and Fern's fight with Lugner and Linny and this one. Both of these arcs introduce the combat at the end of a previous episode. This lets them take their time in setting up the stakes without crunching on time, allowing for an entire uninterrupted episode focusing specifically on the action. So that's where we start with the first of the 2 pairs. We follow Stark and Genau in the first phase of this combat, diving right in. After each episode airs, I often hop in a call with the editors and animator I work with, the latter of which recently used the term high fidelity animation. I think it's a perfect way to describe a major component of what makes Frieren's action sequences so special. And literally one of the first shots we get is this fantastic movement from Genau where there's warping around him to indicate the speed and momentum behind his movement. It was the moment while watching this episode where I said, yep, we're in for something good. But we'll be focusing on that high fidelity animation later. First, I want to talk about a component that I think is very important to fight scenes, especially for action sequences that I like the most. The first video I ever uploaded on this channel was focusing on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and specifically how they use fight scenes to progress character and plot. There's this common trope that I'm going to call cut to victory, where right before a fight starts, you just skip it all and go to the results. It's often used in media to save budget or time, or even as a comedic beat. I like when fight scenes can't do that, where decisions and actions influence characters and plot, and I think Genau and Stark's fight is a perfect example of that. Outside of just the fantastic spectacle, there are tons of moments that impact them as characters and inform their dynamic. The first obvious and fun example, especially given the parallel to the Lugnar-Linny fights, is how he uses the same trick of tanking a non-lethal hit as a way to bait an open strike. Genau seizes the opportunity and it puts them in a winning position, but this is where character decisions come in. Genau, who's been in an obvious emotionally volatile state for a while now, is baited by a demon's magic into trying to protect a child, an irrational decision that's even admitted to by the character, but comes from an incredibly well set up emotional place. Looping back information around the loss of his previous partner, the destruction of his home, and the way he sees himself as a professional and cold killer. I love the composition of this shot representing him getting stabbed through the chest, but that's a topic we'll touch on a little bit later. Because as Revolte goes to strike, Stark stands in between him and blocks a direct blow, leading to this quote, "I didn't think there was a warrior alive who could stop a direct hit from me." Once again, great execution on setup, tying back to the scene where Frieren talks about the warrior who died fighting Revolte, who was stronger than Stark, to which he responded, "That's a low bar." The way Stark and Genau push one another in this fight is fantastic. Stark as a warrior and character in this series is someone that repeatedly has leapt into dangerous situations to protect others, especially when it comes to exploring this major kind of tropey theme that we get a lot in media, the indomitable human spirit during a high stakes fight. And as Genau gets up to continue, we get maybe the coldest line of the entire series, "I shall walk into the jaws of death with you, Stark," to which he responds, "I'm looking forward to that. I can't stop shaking." Stark and Genau are constantly making decisions during this fight that inform their character and dynamic. We see the mistakes and successes that come from their decisions, ones deeply tied to their characters and the way they're written. The great character writing in this episode doesn't stop at Stark and Genau. Great writing during an action sequence can expand on a character, giving us new and interesting information, but that's not the only way to do it. It's also a great setting to expand on a character for the first time, especially if they've been built around intrigue. So when we jump to Fern and Methode's fight sequence, we get a perfect opportunity for just that. We start with Fern struggling. She finds herself in an incredibly unfavorable matchup. This will come back in a second when we talk about surprises. But what I love about the writing in Methode's fight is how much we learn about her character. Up until this point, she's been kind of an enigma. She's one of the few important characters from the Mage exam that we never really got to see fight. For Methode, we just got a cut to victory against Fern's clone. So this is actually the first time we really see her in action. Normally, inner monologues in anime fight scenes tend to be a bit reductive. Often they're explaining stuff that's already obvious instead of giving the audience something to chew on, but I don't feel that way at all about the way Methode was thinking about the fight. It's always nice when writing decisions feel clever or surprising. For very practical logistical reasons, anime often stays away from brawls. Fights often reduce to individual combat because it's a lot easier to follow and create stakes. Last week, before this episode aired, my editors and I were talking about how it'd be really cool if there was some interference, overlap and interaction between the two fights so it doesn't feel so siloed. So you can imagine how excited I was when Methode's solution wasn't just to win her matchup, but specifically to help Fern win hers. It demonstrates a lot about her character, even the way she executes it. Finding ways for characters to win fight scenes that aren't straightforward can be really satisfying. It's such a pleasant surprise that adds a lot to an already great episode and character. This in conjunction with all the things we learned about her character, whether or not it's her clan or coming back to that theme of mages that love magic. It was just a lot for an audience to chew on. But the real genius of Methode's fight doesn't stop there. It turns out animating a four-armed snake-like demon is tricky. With the Revolte fight, I feel like the animation was a bit mixed, really high quality, and then stuff that was passable. But every frame, every movement of Methode and the demon she was fighting felt fantastic. The peak of this kind of high-fidelity animation. Literally, these clips are just breathtaking, and it never stopped. It's like I've been craving this specific thing and we were given a feast. Thank God, because I think this was really important for Frieren's second season coming together as a finished product. Because throughout the second season, I think there's been a lower level of quality control. I'm sure if we had insight behind the scenes, it would make a lot of sense. Production isn't easy. But directing isn't just about animation and movement, which leads to a crucial component of what made Friern's fight work so well. The directing choices and composition in this episode I think were very special. And specifically building around that recurring theme of moonlight is awesome. The moment where Frieren disappears and we get this shot of seeing the moon's reflection through rippling water before it starts to deform, and then Zoltrak hits. It's beautiful and unique and something that immediately stood out to me. The sequence of Methode and Frieren taking on the final demon, every part of it's beautiful and taking full advantage of great composition. Methode is just so cool, and once again they find awesome ways to demonstrate just how terrifying Frieren is. But all of these fantastic components like great character writing, high fidelity animation, composition, directing choices, they all contribute to these fantastic fight sequences within these two sets of duos, leading to ultimately the most important part of any fight sequence, the climax. As much as Frieren and Methode's fight sequence demonstrates finesse, when we return to the final moments of Stark and Genau versus Revolte, we get the opposite, a scene filled with raw intensity. This blood-curdling battle with just so much underlying emotion. The mistakes and successes a byproduct of that. Where they're foolhardy and aggressive and caught by Revolte, they're also humans filled with overwhelming perseverance. But the real part of the scene that stood out to me is something that wasn't originally in the manga. After each episode in Season 2, I've been going and reading the manga to compare and contrast the equivalent chapters. And something that consistently happens in the adaptation process into anime is total freedom in shifting fight scenes. The fights in the manga are incredibly lackluster in comparison to what we get in the anime. But the thing that stood out to me the most in this episode is how my favorite scene wasn't even in the manga. After this brutal fight, when Stark and Genau are on the edge of survival, we see more outstanding high-fidelity animation as Genau crawls towards Stark and remembers the death of his partner, an outlet for all of that grit and emotion that's been building the entire arc. They play with perspective as Genau passes out, and when he wakes up being healed by Methode, something that was set up at the beginning of the arc, we get to see the scene when she arrived. Genau pointing for her to heal Stark first, his wounds wrapped tightly by Genau's jacket. A beautiful exclamation point, a perfect peek to an episode already filled to the brim with fantastic components, delivering on a season's worth of setup. Thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next week.